If you're a close watcher of the business environment for podcasts, you'd be familiar with the work of James Cridland. He's the editor of podcasting.net, a podcasting newsletter and show that covers all the news that matters in the audio world. He's based in Brisbane, Australia, but on a recent trip to Europe and the UK, he popped in to speak to Word on the Square to discuss the markets for podcasts right now, what's making him positive for the future, and the issues the industry is likely to face in the next year.
My name's James Cridland and I'm the editor of podnews.net, which is a podcasting newsletter.
It's interesting, we say it's both a difficult year and a good year for podcasting. What stood out to you as perhaps the not so good things?
Oh, I think when you look into the US and the US podcasting market, it's been a very hard year for a lot of people, just really purely because I think that podcasting may be slightly overheated in the US, and there's been an awful lot of, what's the best way of saying this, correction in terms of the amount of people who are involved in podcasting. So I think from a negative point of view, clearly we've lost a lot of very talented people. Some of those will come back and do different things. But that's not been fun to watch. In
Australia, where we're from, they always say when the US sneezes, Australia catches a cold. Does that mean that globally we might be in for a difficult time for podcasting if we're looking at the US and saying that's an overheated market?
No, I don't think at all. I think actually when you look at Australia, when you look at Europe, podcasting is going great guns. The amount of people listening to podcasts is on its way up. The amount of money that podcasting is making is on its way up. Really, it was a local issue with the US investing a little bit too much money into some of the ideas that they had without really working out how they could make some money out of it. And I think in Europe, in Australia, we've done things a little bit differently and, dare I say it, a little bit better in terms of, planning for a sustainable future. Because that's where we really need to be. Creativity needs to be sustainable in whatever way, shape or form we actually do that. But, great numbers coming out of Australia, great numbers coming out of here in the UK. So, yeah. Some
good news, like, for example, Acast turning a profit. What else stood out as the better news, perhaps, from the last year or so? Yeah,
and I actually think, Spotify not going for exclusivity is an important and positive thing. So all of the exclusives that they used to have on their platform last year have all been let free, and they're now available everywhere. And I think that that's good news it's good news for Spotify. They'll actually earn more money that way. But it's also good news for podcasting, because podcasting has really succeeded because it's open, because it's available on lots of different platforms, because anyone can get on the same platform as the Joe Rogans and the, Shag Maridanoids of this world and the Hamish and Andy. And I think that's the exciting bit about this media, that there are no gatekeepers. There's nobody saying no, you can't be listed on Spotify, you can't be listed on Apple Podcasts. As long as you follow the basic rules, yes, of course you can. And so anybody actually has a chance of doing a fantastic job there.
Tim, I don't know about you, but what really stood out to me with James's numbers is that the amount of time that people are listening is the important thing. It's not how many people are downloading, it's actually length of time that they're listening that is really interesting.
Well, I was curious, if you're sitting here, if you had to forecast being here a year from now, what do you think will be the major point or topic or area of concern you might be discussing?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I think getting podcasting more diverse is important. Getting it to reflect the voices and the and the people who are listening to it. Actually, they've done a pretty good job in the US, where podcast listening seems to match the overall population. So from that point of view, that's good. It's not quite the same here in Europe, and it's not quite the same in Australia either. So making sure that the voices are more diverse is an important part. But I think, my expectation, and as we record this, I'm waiting for the new figures coming out of the US next week, which will show us how many people in America are listening to podcasts. My expectation is that will continue to be going up quite nicely, and that we'll be in a pretty good place next year, particularly after we've felt our way after the job cuts that we've seen in the US.
James Cridland, he's the editor of podnews.net.